to the Ergo2go podcast, brought to you by the Back School and Ability on Demand. I'm your host, Matt Jeffs. We bring you interesting people from the world of ergonomics, on-site injury prevention, risk management, health, safety, well-being, and a whole lot more. Don't forget to subscribe below and click on the little bell in the upper right-hand corner to get the latest on the overlapping fields of ergonomics, health and safety, risk management, human resources, and healthcare, right here on the Ergo2go podcast. Today's guest is a prolific author on outcomes economics. He's one of the four most acclaimed speakers on population health. He's been featured in most every major lay and healthcare publication, but he still can't get his kids to clean up their rooms. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Ergo2go podcast the co-founder and CEO of Quizzify, a learning platform that creates health-literate employees, Al Lewis. Al, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on.
And I hope you can get those kids to clean up their room.
Well, actually, I've been using that line for about 15 years, and they're actually already out of the house. And ironically, I've, of course, visited both of them. They keep their apartments and houses vastly nicer than they kept ours.
Well, I wonder why that is.
It's when you're in charge. It's like healthcare. I mean, if it's somebody else who's paying the price, you tend to act differently than if it's your own abode that you're in charge of.
Very astute, very astute. I didn't even think about putting those two together, but you're right. Let's do a little bit of a past, present, future formatting here. And if you're all right, a little bit of past for folks who maybe have not met Al Lewis first. Now, you hold 2 degrees from Harvard, where you also taught economics. How did this background lead into the field of population health?
Well, like many things, you kind of stumble into something and then you realize you're in it, kind of thing. So I worked at Bain & Company for years, and then it looked like Bain was going down the tubes, which of course it did not do. So I abandoned ship and got a job running a healthcare company. I'd been doing healthcare consulting. It was actually a legitimate company. It was a NASDAQ company. It was listed on NASDAQ. And the thing is, as NASDAQ companies went, it was fairly pathetic. I mean, when I came into work in the morning and I would see a letter from NASDAQ on my desk, I was sure they were writing to say they were delisting us. But nonetheless, it worked out shockingly well. And we ended up merging with another company, and the stock price, it went down well after I left, but I left on a good note. And then I started doing this consulting in the area of disease management, and somehow I got credited with inventing disease management. I mean, you can Google on the phrase "invented disease management," you get me. Not quite sure how I have no memory of having invented disease management, but I'll take it. It's what the search engines say rules these days.
Right.
So I did have enough sense to kind of try to keep other people out of the field of being the middle person in disease management. So for a while, when health plans were the buyers, virtually all of them went through my group, the Disease Management Purchasing Consortium. And then one day I figured out that, we would tell people you're going to save all this money and da 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 da. Well, one day I figured out that we were doing the math all wrong. I mean, we're making one rookie mistake. It's in my book, Why Nobody Believes the Numbers. We were basically assuming that the entire population that had a disease had claims for the disease. So if you measured the whole population pre and post, there was no regression to the mean. It wasn't like just measuring the high utilizers. But what we figured out was that, in fact, there are many people who have a disease who don't have claims for it, and they're the ones who can only go up because they were at zero. So in fact, if you measure on the whole what you think is the whole population, you are getting regression to the mean. Essentially, the entire it turned out the entire impact was regression to the mean. In fact, I have you've probably seen it online because I raffle off a week there every year. But I have a house on Martha's Vineyard. I used to call it the house that disease management built, and then I started calling it the house that regression to the mean built. So so I mentioned this in a conference. I was presenting. I said, by the way, we really have to look at the numbers again because it turns out we're making this mistake, and if you take out the mistake, there's really no savings left. And a blogger picked it up, a well-known blogger at the time. In fact, you can actually still find the blog. It's got a great headline. It says, "A founding father of disease management astonishingly declares, 'My kid is ugly.'" So Healthway stock tanked after that, and there was another publicly traded company, and they tanked as well. I kind of realized that maybe this wasn't such a good long-term play for me. So I mean, I had all these clients, so I figured I'd segue them into wellness because wellness had to save money because everybody said wellness saved money.
Right.
It's a little like Steve Carell on The Office. Michael G. Scott, I think it was, says, "Why does 2 and 2 equal 4? Why does the sun rise in the east? Because everybody says so. That's why."
Right.
So I started looking at this wellness stuff, and the more I looked, the more of a rat's nest it turned out to be. That all the numbers were made up. I mean, not just a few of them, but just massively made up. So I thought, well, this is good. This will be my niche. I'll be the person who helps people measure right and everything. So I wrote my first book, Why Nobody Believes the Numbers.
Right.
It did quite well. It actually apparently did too well because I ended up I thought people were going to say, "Oh, great, thank you for this. We now know how to measure. We won't make these same mistakes." No, it was exactly the opposite. I got blacklisted from the conferences that I used to present at because nobody wanted to hear that their numbers were wrong, that this was a very lucrative field for a lot of vendors and a lot of consultants.
Mm-hmm.
So the book, which was very respectful, I didn't mention any names at all in a disrespectful way. The book ended up kind of causing me to have to go rogue. It caused me to go rogue because working within the system was not working.
Mm-hmm.
So then I got together with Tom Emmerich, and we wrote the book we're probably best known, or I'm probably best known for, even though I'm not the lead author, which was Cracking Health Costs, where it turned out there were just a ridiculous number of things where people were just making up outcomes and fabricating savings and all sorts of stuff. So we put that out, and then the way I got into this was, so people would say to me, "Okay, I get it. I've read the books. I totally get it. None of this stuff actually works. So what should we do instead?" I'm thinking, if I could come up with an instead, I could make a lot of money on this thing. So, and I didn't know what that instead was going to be. Well, one day, because of another book I'd written, because as you mentioned, I used to teach economics, so I wrote an economics book that I think only maybe 150 people bought or something like that. But one of the people who bought it somehow knew somebody at the head of the NPR affiliate in Washington, D.C.
Right.
And so he says, let's make a radio show out of this. It's really cool. And he says, but oh, by the way, we're on a tight budget, so you'll have to host. I mean, I don't know if the first thing about hosting a radio show, but I mean, it was my book. I mean, how bad could I be at it? So I mean, it turned out there's all these little buttons, and I don't know, all stuff I wasn't particularly good at. But in any event, so the show went on, and after the first episode, the producer says, "Okay, this is great. This is for your first show. This is good. We'll do some post-production, we'll make it look really good, and you'll sound better after you get over your cold." Well, newsflash, this is what you hear is what you get. Right. So I call my my primary care doc, who I'm in a patient-centered medical home, which means they throw medical care at you, because they want to make you happy and triple aim and everything. So I say, hey, I just got this new gig. I'm going to lose it because of my sinuses, and I'm sure it's my sinus because a long time ago somebody told me I had a deviated septum, and so she, I got her on the phone because patient-centered medical home. They call you back. She said, "Don't worry, I'll get you in to see an ENT." So I'm telling you, I called from Washington D.C. on a Wednesday. Well, by the next Monday, she had me an appointment with an ENT. So the ENT, looks in my nostrils with a thing. I know people don't. Probably don't have to show people my nostrils. I can just say. She looks and she, look my sinuses and everything. She says, "Well, your deviated septum is the least of your issues. You have polyps."
Oh, great.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what the hell this is. So she says, so she launches it. This whole conversation takes place in 7 or 8 minutes. Okay, she says, "Well, and there's three things we can do about them. One is we can operate, we can take them out, and they could grow back. But number two is we could do 3 weeks of antibiotics. Or number three, we could do 3 weeks of antibiotics plus Flonase. And oh, by the way, I'd like to order a CAT scan of your sinuses as well." So, I'm in the healthcare field, and I'm thinking, my God, this seems like such a humongous overkill. So the first thing I said is, well, shouldn't we do the most conservative thing first? And she says, and I'm capturing the intonation exactly as she says, "Well, you could." Right, yeah, only an idiot would, So, and then I say, I say first, it's not bacterial, because she wants to put me on 3 weeks of antibiotics. And I said, "Isn't 3 weeks an awful long time for antibiotics?"
Right.
Yeah. And she says, "Well," and then she gives like the cliche response for when a doctor doesn't have any evidence. They say, "Well, my patients report good results for the antibiotics." I'm thinking, I got to get out of here as quick as possible.
Right.
So I agreed to do the Flonase. She says, it says once a day, but you should do it twice a day. So that's fine. So I go fill it for, and I, of course I'm not going to get a CAT scan of my sinuses. I don't want to, radiation aimed at my head.
10,000 X-rays or something like
that.
Yeah,
it's not that many, but it's a lot. It's a lot. It's 100 to 1,000. Worth of radiation, and a CAT scan has that much radiation versus an X-ray.
Right.
So I make a note. Don't call and get a CAT scan, and I'll just do the Flonase. So I don't call and get a CAT scan, but I'm telling you, I get back to my house, and I live maybe 10 minutes from the doctor. There's already a message on my home machine to schedule the CAT scan. So I figure, I don't call these people back; they'll go away. No. They call back twice. So I had to call and affirmatively cancel this CAT scan.
Right.
And the funny thing is, these folks weren't actually making any money, because the first thing you think is, as you've described on LinkedIn, that somebody is making a lot of money on this thing. Well, the PCMH that I'm in is at the time was fully capitated by the health plan. So they were, if they did a CAT scan of the surgery, they're losing a ton of money. So I figured just do the Flonase. Well, here's a few things that happen. Okay, so number one, I'm doing it religiously. I mean, it's yucky stuff, because it goes in your nose, but you can feel it going down your throat. The part that doesn't. And so number two, I actually stopped to read the label at some point. Because I think because I'm not feeling any less hoarse than I normally feel. And it says right on the label, it says side effects include hoarseness. So I'm taking this
wonderful. Yeah.
So I discontinue. I just stopped taking it. And then I start getting these nasty notes from the PBM where they rate my compliance. I'm getting 0 stars for compliance because I'm not taking this thing. It doesn't do any good.
Right.
So that's when I thought, okay, so I thought, the long answer is, that's when I had the epiphany that I can't possibly be the only person who gets thrown medical care at. And if we teach people more about medical care, like the one about the CAT scan having so much radiation in it, their natural inclination will be to say thanks but no thanks to a bunch of things they don't need.
Yes.
And just knowing that a CAT scan has 500 times the radiation X-ray is enough for many people, first of all, to not demand the things, which people often do, and second, to just gently push back and say, gosh, don't those have a lot of radiation?
Yeah.
So that's where Quizzify came from. And then I have a background in trivia. I wrote if you had subscribed to Newsweek magazine, I don't know, about 30-something years ago, you would have gotten a copy of a trivia game that I wrote for Newsweek. And I also used to host a trivia game show series on one of the network affiliates here in Boston. and I was on Jeopardy once as well. So I had a strong trivia background. So I thought I'd put it all together and and create this company. And by the way, people ask me if I won. You know, that's and I always say, well, let me repeat. I was on Jeopardy once.
Right.
So
If
so
you
that's
fought,
how Quizify came to be. And then the other, just sort of wrap up another loose end, is that I put that story in Cracking Health Costs in the book, and a mutual friend gave it to the guy who runs this medical practice. It's a huge medical practice. It's called Atrius Health here in Boston. And he's reading. He's just, I can't believe this happened. You got to come work for us, to help us not do this anymore. So that was and to this day I do. It's a great organization. I'm pleased to be affiliated with it. So that's where Quizify came from.
you and we'll get into the next segment where we talk about you got on my radar back from those LinkedIn chat rooms, and I remember wondering who this guy was, because I was so unsophisticated back then that I thought wellness would be this wonderful thing. And then, you became this Darth Vader who came in and shared this other side to it, where all of a sudden I realized, wow, maybe he's right, and then I read your book, the Surviving Workplace Wellness, and I was hooked. I felt like I had read Moneyball, because Moneyball was,
Right.
are we keeping the right stats here? And I guess that's a summary. Is that kind of?
Well, Surviving Workplace Wellness, which those of you who are only familiar with the two books that actually sold any copies, which is to say Cracking Health Costs and Why Nobody Believes in Numbers, Surviving Workplace Wellness is more pop, and it's not so much it says, are we keeping the right stats?
Right.
It basically gives the wellness industry the opportunity to self-immolate,
Right.
to just completely shoot themselves in the foot. So it's not me so much saying something, it's just me taking screenshots and saying, can you believe these people are saying this? And by the way, Matt, to your point, I also, as you recall, used to believe that this wellness stuff worked. It's so obvious, you spend more money on prevention and you're going to prevent costs down the road.
Right. Well, and I guess it depends on the motive, and we'll get into that in our second segment. Can I trouble you to stick around a little bit? And
yeah, I'll just tell Pope Francis he's going to have to wait in the next room a couple minutes here.
You're so kind. But before we break, if people want to learn more about the important work you're doing, what's the best way for them to find you?
Well, I'm Al at Quizzify.com. They can read the blog theysaidwhat.net, which is full of, just punch in the name of your wellness vendor in the search function and cross your fingers that it doesn't show up.
Right. Oh, good. Very good stuff. Well, let's come back in segment 2 and delve into Quizzify a little bit, because that's a subject near and dear to my heart as well. Can you stick around?
Sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Al. You've been listening to and watching the Ergo2go podcast. I'm your host, Matt Jeffs, brought to you by the Back School and Ability on Demand. We bring you interesting people like Al Lewis from the world of ergonomics, on-site injury prevention, health, safety, well-being, and a whole lot more. Don't forget to subscribe below and click on the little bell in the upper right-hand corner to get the latest info on the overlapping fields of ergonomics, health and safety, risk management, human resources, and healthcare right here on the Ergo2go podcast. Until next time, let's stay safe, let's stay smart, and let's be helpful. See you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.